As I think about quilts as objects, as a curator, as, frankly, a detached researcher, I'm really drawn to them. The best ones, the ones that are visually attractive, where we know who the makers are, become avenues for all sorts of inquiry. And my background is not in art history. My background is in history and economic history and social history. And quilts speak to those things in so many different ways. If you know the maker, you can place that maker in a community and perhaps see how that quilt might have related the maker to other people within her community. If you're just looking at the textiles that they're made out of, they can tell you so much about the history of textile production in the United States, what sorts of patterns were popular, what sorts of technologies were being used, how those technologies changed. I'm often asked by visitors, by patrons, by collectors of other things, why do quilts belong in an art museum? It's not usually asked in a critical sort of way, but just because they aren't used to seeing quilts always in an art museum setting. And frankly, I hope we're reaching the point where that question really shouldn't be asked. It shouldn't need to be asked. The best quilts, American or otherwise, are great art objects. They're visually engaging. They tell us something about the aesthetic, social, economic context out of which they came, the context in which they were made. I think quilts have suffered a little bit because they fall out of the traditional narrative of Western art history and the study of art history. For one, they were largely made by women. For another, those women were usually anonymous. And thirdly, it's a medium that falls outside of the traditional fine arts, so-called, of painting and sculpture. And I think that's one of the reasons they always have not been given the due that they deserve. And hopefully the exhibition we had here, drawn from the Bingham-Miller family collection, helped dispel that, helped show that quilts are engaging aesthetically, they're engaging historically, that they do tell us something very important, not just about the periods in which they were made and their makers, but about us and how we react to them as great works of art. The goals of the exhibition, Quilts from Kentucky and Beyond, there were several. I think for me, one of my goals was really to show the Kentucky quilts within the Bingham-Miller family collection to their best advantage. The Speed is the state's oldest and largest art museum, and we feel very strongly that we have a responsibility to exhibit, to research, to preserve the best of the state's artistic heritage. And then in terms of organizing the exhibition, my goal is really to focus on the fact that the Bingham-Miller collection is a collection of collections. So we had a group of Kentucky things. We had a great group of 19th century pieced and applique quilts. We had another wonderful group of Amish and Mennonite quilts. And it even went right up into the 20th century with pictorial quilts, which were another favorite area of collecting for the family, and right up through things from the late 1990s as well. And if there's one thought that I'd try to leave any visitor who came to see a quilt was, well, think about this as an object of memory, an object of family memory, the memories of the makers, the economic memories, the residue that's left behind that we can look at. And I think those kinds of objects are the ones that are the most powerful and that can be the most engaging, whether for a curator, for a collector, or for a museum visitor.